Greetings, humanity, and welcome. I'm Nemo Jones, reporting for Beauty, and this is another Neme stream. And it's great to have you here. Obviously, amazing if you can hit like, subscribe to the channel, share this if you think it's of value, and whatever, anything else like that. So I've been doing these for a little while, somewhat irregularly, and this one came into my mind just intuitively. I just thought, I'd like to cover this subject, and partly because I want to think about it a little bit more myself than I have done. So I've done that. It's done some of that, and the purpose for this whole channel is to talk about morality, talk about natural law, and hopefully stimulate thought, inspire action, all that kind of stuff. So this topic for this is specifically milk, dairy, that industry, and our relationship to it through an ethical lens. Ethical or moral, meaning based on what's wrong or right. So I've spoken a bit about that recently, but just to kind of go over that ground kind of very briefly, my take on morality is that a sentient being with a conscience, with a conscious sentient being, i.e. self-conscious sentient being with a conscience, can only really look at another sentient being and recognize, if they are rational, can only look at a sentient being and recognize that that sentient being possesses the same qualities as them and the same preferences, exactly the same preferences. So I guess when you look at a subject such as the dairy industry, what you're really looking for is, is this how I would wish to be treated? Would this be my preference? And so to go a bit into my dietary history, just kind of cover that. It's been quite varied, really. I was actually brought up vegetarian. I spent probably the first 20-something years, not sure exactly, of my life being vegetarian. And it's interesting looking back because I don't know why. Well, when you're in that context, you just sort of think, well, I guess this is what I'm doing. It's the culture of your surroundings. So that kind of was easy for me, but I didn't really think about the dairy industry ever, which is kind of amazing. And then I had an interesting, to me, sort of psychological, social, I guess, relationship with the world, in that if you're brought up in that way, you're kind of missing out. It's like something that you're not doing, right? So I guess there was always this feeling of missing out. And, that's part of this whole subject, is the cultural, I don't know, I don't want to say cachet, but it can be that. But there's so much culture that's based around animal, the consumption of animal products. It's so deeply embedded, and you really notice this when you go into it and out of it, and you sort of feel this feeling of like, oh, I'm missing out on something. So yeah, I guess I had that as a kid, and even I was consuming dairy for all that time. Anyway, I then went to, I dabbled as it were. I started to ate fish for a while, and then I went into eating meat. And I was never a huge meat eater, and I had sort of mixed feelings about it. But there were times when I sort of thought I had to eat beef. Got to have my mince, got to get the protein in, kind of thing. There were sort of fairly long periods where I was like that. I never had a huge taste for it really, but I did. I did eat it. But we're not really talking about meat here. But anyway, this is just to cover my history. There were also points in there where I did raw food at one point, not for a hugely long time, but that was quite interesting. And then I'm trying to remember. I think I went. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was about 2 or 3 years ago. So there was quite a long period where I was consuming meat. Oh, and the other thing is that I started during points. At points during that, I would eat roadkill. I was like, I can eat roadkill because that's ethical. That was my kind of reasoning, and something to do with this culture of meat eating, which is like this deep sort of programming or deep shared sense that that it's like proper food or something. I mean, an interesting thing to note at this point is that the word meat has come to mean animal flesh, and it did not originally mean that. It originally meant a shared meal or just food. So that's I find that kind of interesting, that the vegetables were kind of edged out, and it came to be like taken that meat has to mean meat. It's not a proper meal if it hasn't got meat, what we now call meat. Anyway, that's an aside. So I went through that process, and then it was a couple of years ago, and I was working in a cafe, and I was cooking up breakfasts, bacon, sausages, eggs, and it was actually something that I heard Mark Passio say. He said, "Can you look yourself in the mirror and say that you own this animal? Or can you look an animal in the eye and say, I own you?" And that was when I went pretty much immediately. That for whatever reason, that's what landed with me. And that's kind of, I'm going to reflect that back in this context as well. So that's a sort of little bit about my history. So the reason I want to talk about this subject is because I'll switch to this screen. So I always bring this up because for me this has become quite a valuable thing. Is it going to do it? Sorry, 1 second. Full screen, yes please. Okay, this was working before I went live. I'm not sure what's happening there. Full screen. Okay, that's not working. Oh, that's a shame. Anyway, it's to do with right action. To do with what I call the lower realm of right action, is to do with not doing harm, do no harm, and then the other side of it is allow no harm. So for me, this is a form of that. It's a form of right action because I am endeavoring to reduce harm in the world. Harm meaning, in this context, meaning violence or coercion, which is initiated against an innocent person or being. Okay, so that covers that stuff, I think, about why I'm talking about this subject. Fairly straightforward. talked about my dietary history. So now I don't eat animal products. Haven't done for a couple of years. And yeah, it's funny because I look back at my young years and think, oh, it's weird that, and I also look at vegetarians and I go, oh, interesting. Yeah, what's the reasoning there? And that, so for me, there's something kind of interesting about, or not, it's not that it's interesting. That's not a very useful word. It's, if you really focus on dairy, I feel that the meat issue can kind of take care of itself more, because dairy, there isn't really, as far as I can see, any kind of a convincing argument for the health benefits of dairy. I mean, not that you can't get, nutrients from dairy, but they're easily replaceable with lots of other things. And of course, there's myths around that as well. Certain, you've got to, that are known to have been perpetuated by the dairy industry to sell more milk. So people have kind of wrong ideas about, like, really very wrong ideas about the health benefits of dairy. So, yeah, to sort of talk about this in the culture. I mean, this is sort of some of the research that I've done. I mean, if we just go through, obviously we have milk, all the variations of milk: whole milk, semi-skimmed milk, skim milk, raw milk, organic milk, UHT milk, goat's milk, sheep's milk, buttermilk, single cream, double cream, whipping cream, clotted cream, sour cream, creme fraiche, yogurt, Greek yogurt, kefir, cultured buttermilk, butter, cultured butter, ghee, fresh cheese, ricotta, cottage cheese, mascarpone, mozzarella, soft ripened cheese, brie, camembert, semi-soft cheese, Haiarti, don't know what that is, Fontina, don't know what that is, hard cheese, cheddar, Cheshire, red Leicester, very hard cheeses are Parmesan, Pecorino, Stilton, Roquefort, Gorgonzola, Taleggio, Epoisses, excuse my French, goat cheese, sheep cheese, processed cheeses. And then we have ice cream, gelato, frozen yogurt, custard, rice pudding, milkshake, chocolate milk, flavoured milk, condensed milk, evaporated milk, milk powder, whey powder, casein powder, infant formula protein shakes, hot chocolate, whey, casein, caseinates, lactose, cream powder, chocolate. These are ingredients that are in, other things. Fudge, toffee, caramel, truffles, cheesecake, panna cotta, blancmange, cakes, biscuits, pastries, quark, skier, labneh, ayran, lassi, there's so many things. Dairy spreads, some breads, crisps, etc., etc. On it goes. Loads and loads and loads of things that have milks in, that contain dairy. And then we have things that are food stuffs which commonly have dairy things in them, such as pizza, cheeseburger, toasted cheese sandwich, familiar things on the menu: macaroni cheese, lasagna, cannelloni, ravioli, tortellini, calzone, stromboli, garlic bread with cheese, nachos, quesadilla, blah, blah, blah. On it goes, on and on. Tacos, quiche, Welsh rarebit, cheese and onion pie, cottage pie with cheese, just non-stop. Cauliflower cheese, it just doesn't stop. A cheese board, ploughman's lunch, cheese fries, cheese scones. I mean, I know all this, but it's kind of it's just like it just goes on and on and on. This list doesn't stop. So obviously, because it's so in the culture. So how has that happened? That's the kind of question that I am kind of with. Well, it's not so much how it's happened, but how, like, what are we doing when we remove that? We're kind of removing ourselves from the culture to a large degree. When we say, and I've started to experiment. Like for instance, I've started to have pizzas with no cheese because, fake cheese that you get is just processed rubbish. And actually, I was having one of these the other day, and a friend tried it, and was kind of as surprised as I was to find that actually a pizza, the thing that's mostly nice about a pizza actually doesn't seem to be the cheese. It's actually really nice to just have a pizza without cheese. So anyway, that's that. But yeah, it is kind of in the culture, and well, it's in our culture, but it's not. It's never been global. There's always been large parts of the world that just haven't done this thing of milking cows. And obviously, as I've indicated, it's not an essential thing at all for our health, and there are health issues associated with it. Lactose intolerance, yada yada, which is not really my focus, but I think I don't think anyone is seriously arguing that it's essential. So if it's not essential, that means it's a kind of luxury, right? So it's a something that we prefer, right? Okay, so we prefer it, but what does it actually mean? And so I'm just going to talk through what it actually means, and I'm just going to grab my notes for this. So, and I suppose the question is this a way that you would wish to be treated? And you already know the answer, and I already know the answer, but let's actually have an actual think about what it actually consists of. So this is not in any particular order. This is just kind of facts about the dairy industry. So a natural lifespan of a cow, and obviously we could talk about the very existence of cows as they now exist because they've been bred to exist as they do now. So it's a whole separate question. I did have someone say to me recently, "Oh, if I didn't drink milk, then the cows wouldn't exist. There wouldn't be a reason for them to exist." And obviously, this is a kind of, I guess, what would you say? This is a kind of bypassing type argument. As far as I can see, it's like, because there's living and then there's existence, and I mean, you could argue that about a battery farmed hen, the same way, battery farmed chicken, which is essentially what, it's really is equivalent, I would say. So the natural lifespan of cows as they currently exist is somewhere between 15 and 20 years. But a dairy cow's lifespan is somewhere between 4 and 8 years before they're culled for meat. And the meat would be like something like probably, not steaks in a restaurant. It would be pet food, that kind of thing. So a cow is impregnated to produce milk, basically once a year. And this is generally done through artificial insemination. And this is done by inserting an arm into the rectum, which then enables you to feel, apparently, through the rectum, you can feel the uterus, and you can then guide your injection of the sperm into the cervix that way. So it's a kind of, well, if it was a human being, it would be called a double rape, I suppose. So, yeah, is that what you would prefer when you prefer cheese? or milk. So they're then also again checked rectally for, or commonly checked rectally for during pregnancy. The reason for this obviously is they have to have calves in order to have milk, but the calves are removed shortly after birth. Female calves may be raised as replacement dairy cows to live for 4 to 8 years, so much less than half of their natural life. And of course, it's not just that they are culled; it's that they're culled because they are considered of no use anymore, and they're often not very healthy at that point, as far as I understand. So male calves have no value as in the dairy industry, so they are pretty much most likely to be culled in most cases very young. And yes, so for meat, and obviously this was, according to my research, they do not any longer use the veal, or at least in this country, they don't use the veal system, or I can't remember exactly what it's called, but where they keep them in very, I think they kept them basically in the dark, and with very little movement, basically kind of made them anemic so that the meat was very delicate. But it seems like the longest one of these male calves is likely to live is around 8 months. This is just a pretty cursory research. Some of this could be wrong. Yeah, so, oh yes, of course, the other thing that this would be used in would be burgers, mince, pies, processed foods, and pet food. Yeah, so, oh no, they may live to longer than that, to 4 to 8 years. Yeah, so that is essentially the story of a cow's life in the dairy industry. So the ethical question, I mean, it's funny because when I was thinking about this, I thought, oh, this might be quite a short stream, and actually it might be really short because I've kind of covered basically the points. The point is, would you appreciate this life? If this was human beings, would you go for it? And if it was you, if it was your family, would you accept this treatment? And if not, then stop supporting it. And that's really it. It's very, very simple. And you can absolutely 100% thrive without dairy. And as I said, I'm not really tackling meat because I think this is kind of an easier thing to think about for some reason. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this, but because there isn't really justification, and people's justification is things like, well, of course it's habitual, and it's like, well, oh, I don't like oat milk or whatever, but oat milk in itself and all of that sort of replacement pretend dairy stuff is kind of questionable, really. I mean, I feel like that's a phase that we're going through as we kind of wean ourselves off the actual idea of basically drinking milk as adults. It's kind of like, well, we kind of don't need it. You just need a good diet. I mean, I'm not saying, I do drink, some oat milk and that kind of thing. And I do sometimes get a fake blue cheese, which uses the same, bacteria or whatever as blue cheeses, because I do miss that taste, but that's the thing. It's a taste thing. And the fact that these tastes are so embedded in in culture, and in our own experience, our own taste bud. They're so like comforting, and I know some people find it very difficult to stop eating cheese and milk. And I have people just absolutely turn their nose up at oat milk, and they just say, "Well, well, I'm not getting a coffee then." So, and that's fine. I mean, oat milk, it's whatever it is. It's kind of a separate question, because really the question is like, do we need to do this? And the answer is no. And this is something where you can just make a very simple change. It might seem difficult, might be difficult. You might think, oh, I miss that thing. But you actually are going to really struggle to justify it. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of mad. It's like, okay, let's say it was humans. Let's say it was human milk that we were doing this with. And everyone in the world was doing it, and it would have been done forever, been done for generations. And what you mean I can't have my human milk, in my custard pie or whatever it is? It's like, well, actually, as I seem to be saying fairly often on this live stream, just because everyone's doing it doesn't make it right. And in fact, I feel like this is somewhere where, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's like you can change your contribution to harm in the world really easily, really quickly with this. And there isn't actually, I don't think there's a good justification not to do so, apart from I prefer it. I prefer to drink milk. I prefer to eat cheese. I like milk. I like cheese. I like milk. I like the taste of milk. Well, it's funny. You do sort of go off it a bit. I'm not sure I would really appreciate. I don't know. It's been a while. I did it accidentally a bit of butter the other day, and it was kind of like, well, it was odd. So that all changes. And this is the thing. It's like, well, if the culture is of this basically totally abusive system, how are we going to make a system that's not totally abusive? So I'm not really big on veganism. I mean, I don't even particularly like the word. I don't know why. I find it a bit like, oh, come on. Oh yeah, I suppose I have the same programming as other people. It's like, oh, these bloody vegans, and lots of other narratives about, for example, the in the whatever you want to call it, the alternative, the truthers, or the freedom movement. I mean, I'm very like skeptical about those kinds of like ideas, that those things even really exist. But it's not really about that. It's about simple actions that we each can take. Oh, sorry, I didn't finish that thought. So the sort of meme that's out there is that Klaus Schwab wants you to go vegan. The New World Order wants you to be vegan so that you're weak and stupid and whatever, because that's the result of being vegan. Well, I don't really think. A, I don't think that's really the case. B, you can't really argue against the moral point. You're just not really going to be able to argue it. It's basically a satanic, and I'm going to justify my use of that word in a sec. It's basically a satanic worldview to say, well, actually, I can just use another living being however I want. I mean, well, maybe I don't have to justify it. That's basically is kind of the definition, or a sort of definition of Satanism. And yeah, I mean, I will say, I mean, obviously, I listen to Mark Passio. In fact, I want to plug a very good Mark Passio interview that he did this week, and I can't remember the name of the show. I'll just see if I can look that up, because I might as well do that while I'm here, if I can find it. Just give me a second. I think I will be able to. Up there. So this is on YouTube, probably other places. Anyway, but while I'm finding it, it's Mark Passio, was experienced with in the Church of Satan. He has this sort of perspective. He uses Satanism in this way, which is that it's basically the programming that we've all taken on. So we are all essentially what he calls de facto Satanists, as in we only seek comfort and we don't think about the results. Well, there's no better example for really of that than cheese. I mean, there is, but it's a darn good example. And the point is, it's such a good place to just start. If you just start, if you want somewhere to start your spiritual journey, just think about what I've just said about what they do, what the meaning of the dairy industry is, what that is, day in, day out. I mean, obviously I've just given such a simple breakdown. It's not to do with the actual treatment of the animals. There's so much more that I could go into, but there is actually an important point to say about this is about compassion versus ethics, because I've had actually someone say to me on a forum that I thought you vegans, this wasn't actually a vegan forum, but said I thought, it was something along these lines. I'm paraphrasing. It was something like, I thought you vegans were supposed to be compassionate. Isn't veganism about compassion? And frankly, no. And that's perhaps surprising, but the thing is, you can get confused with compassion. Compassion is it's a bit of a fuzzy word to use in this context. It's not that you have to care so much about animals. Oh, I'm such an animal lover that I don't want to harm them. It's not really about that. It can be way, way simpler than that. You don't have to have lots of compassion, because in a way you're asking people then, to care more than they do. And obviously it'd be great if people cared more than they do, but I think the better starting point is just absolutely rational and cold. Really, it's like, do you want to be treated like this? Do you want to be, artificially inseminated in the way that I've described, and then, or your daughter, whatever, and then you're cold because you're a man, or, it's like the whole thing is just, frankly, it's gross. And, the compassion thing is a bit of a misdirect. That's not to say that I'm not, I endeavor to sort of have compassion for people around me and for myself and for the cows, which, funnily enough, I can literally hear munching in the field next door. Hello. I mean, the spaceship next door. They've come out. I'm doing my best. Here. It's funny. Another funny thing about this is that I've lived around cows all my whole life. I've always kind of been next to cows, next to farms, all of that. So it's interesting, and it's interesting that it's not until now that I'm really going, oh yeah, what actually is the dairy industry? What's that about? And just look into it yourself. Just have a look at it. And I mean, to me, these are ways that we can just progress spiritually, like at light speed. I mean, I stopped eating dairy and meat, like that, in 1 second, and that was done. I mean, yes, I had done it before. I'd come from that background, whatever. But hopefully I've sort of conveyed something about it. I don't need to go on for too much longer. I've talked about the ethics of it. I've talked about the process of it. It's very, 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 very simple. And that's, I think, why I wanted to talk about it. And it's not something that I'm particularly going to focus on I'm not a big, yeah, I suppose that's what I'm saying. I'm not a big, like, I'm certainly not a vegan activist, because to me, when I listen to vegans talking, I'm like, are you missing the thing about humans? It's like, are you missing that humans are acting as if they're slaves as well? It's kind of like there's something, and that's, I think, a problem when there's too much. It's almost like too much compassion, and you have, perhaps, not wanting to project, but I think people can get a self-identity as a compassionate person. It's like, oh, I care so much about animals, and now I'm going to go and be a big vegan activist. And I'm not to say that that's not important, but if it's limited to that, then you're really missing, actually, because it's not just about that. And that's why I'm not going to like give someone a hard time if they do support the dairy industry, because we're none of us are perfect, and we're all actually very flawed, and we all are supporting this insanity of this current realm as it is, in some way or another. So that's that. Okay, so it's the guy, the channel on YouTube that I mentioned. Oh, I did find it. What's going on? Is Sean Atwood, and the video is called "Do Satanists Run the World?" And it's an interview with Mark Passio. And if you're interested at all in Mark, for me, I'm so pleased to see him doing a show like that, because he's basically on fire. And I followed him for years, and I honestly think he's a real treasure of this world right now. And to hear him just banging out truth bombs in such concise, in such a concise way, is just amazing. So yeah, I highly recommend that interview. You can get, like, it's just a brilliant download of his thinking. And obviously Mark's inspired me massively, and it's great to see him on such great form, almost better form than ever, because it's so concise, and he's just saying these things kind of like relentlessly, just spelling them out, and spilling the beans and everything, whatever it is. And that's what it's all about. Teaching, learning and teaching. And the great thing that he's just kind of made so clear, which I talk about now, is moral good people get freedom. There's different ways of saying it, but that's the deal. The better we are, the freer we will be. And freedom itself is obviously a big question. I understand that most people don't understand freedom. I don't think I understand freedom. It's something that I'm going to be really delving into soon. It may be my next bit of writing is going to be specifically about free will, and how I believe free will, the correct understanding of free will. Well, I'm not going to say I believe. I'm going to say my thesis, which I have spoken about before, is that the correct understanding of free will clarifies a true relationship of the sentient being with property, the concept of property. And I don't think we really have that yet. So that's what my next bit of work, possibly my next bit, it's definitely upcoming, is a thing specifically about free will and how it relates to property, which I think is a very fundamental piece that I just don't think the thinking has really been done yet on that. And that's an area that I'm attempting to do what I can to offer some clarity on. So it's a short stream. Thank you so much for listening. Please do like, please comment, please subscribe, please share. This is obviously a passion project. I'm going to keep doing it. And if you think it's of value, then spread it out into the world in whatever way you can. I'm playing next Friday, the 26th, in Teignmouth at the Teignmouth Folk Preservation Society. Lovely little venue. I'll be there this coming Friday. And what else? That's about it. Oh, you can support my work at nemojones.com. There's a donate button if you would like to give a regular, small or large regular donation. That's particularly helpful. And I'm very grateful to those of you that are doing that. And I will probably be back on Wednesday and get into that Wednesday rhythm again, I think, because that was working for me. So this was just a one-off. I just wanted to get this. Oh, no, sorry, not this Wednesday. I won't be able to do this Wednesday. That's why I did it tonight. So the following Wednesday, I will aim to be back here talking to you and hoping to educate, inspire, and all of that. And yeah. Maybe I'll do a little tune. Thank you. Good night.